Hello, fans old and new.
And family members who don't message me as much as they used to.
Hello, my uncle. It's been a while. The last you heard of me, I was but the learner, and now I am over 30 years old. Before we get into this field trip episode, we want to repose the question, because we're doing in a couple months an episode based around a question that a listener sent in, and we want you, other listeners, to send in your answers to this to go along with ours to read on the air. And that question is, what do you like most about Angelenos? It's two questions. Oh. What should someone not from here be aware of to make their stay as agreeable as possible? So we want to hear what you think of that question, that double question, and
answer it.
I was pausing to hear your answer. Send that in. We'll read it on the air. We'll attribute it to you. You'll become a massive star like we clearly are.
Hidden LA will write an article about you and not us. It'd be great.
Not Jared Kushner. What's his name?
Steve Bannon.
Nathan Masterson and Steve Bannon will collaborate on an article about you.
Nathan Masters, not Nathan Masterson.
I don't know who I'm talking about. The guy from that 70s show and the guy from the Daily Stormer will write an article about you. But yeah, send us your answer to that question because we want a lot of answers to go through on that episode. And now here comes our field trip episode. Enjoy.
Eat it.
We just ran here from the plaza.
From the city center. And we have news.
There's life. Life in the center of the city. We all thought it was decimated. Welcome, everybody. Old fans and new. Steve Bannon, whatever we talked about.
We went to, get ready for it.
I can't pronounce it. And I know you can't either.
But it's going to fall on me because my last name is my last name.
It's less offensive when you say it.
It's funnier when I mispronounce it because I should know how to say it.
Let me put some funny music under this.
La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. Which is...
That wasn't very funny.
The Plaza of Culture and Art.
Yeah.
Or, as I've been referring to it, the Plaza Museum.
Yeah, it's the museum across the street from Olvera Street that sort of chronicles the history of Los Angeles. And, well, we'll get into it in the field trip in the episode. But yeah, we had a fun time there. The people we were with was Mariah Berlanga-Shevchuk, who is the associate curator there, and also Esperanza Sanchez, who is the assistant curator there. And we were greeted by them.
And we got a full tour.
We got it was a tour that basically taught us the entire history of Los Angeles concisely in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite spots in Los Angeles because it's in one of those old, tall, original buildings of LA.
Yeah, we also get into that.
Yeah, the Brunswick building.
And also they gave us a tour of the current exhibits that they have going on there. But there was also a special event going on, and we got to go to get a buffet of Porto's food, which we referenced it in the episode that we like to say Greg took so much food.
I didn't take that much.
Yeah, you didn't, but it was funny to say that you did because it made you feel bad.
I felt like a raccoon around just a bag of trash.
And meanwhile, I probably had more food than you did, and I was like, get a load of this guy.
He's putting on a plate. I just eat it straight out of the box. But get a load of that
when
guy.
When no one was looking, I had 5 handfuls of croissants. There's a lot of cool stuff in the museum, and it's really... Again, as we talk about, the only place that sort of tells the like early history.
It's almost like a museum dedicated to LA history.
Yeah.
It doesn't start with 1848.
The LA Times was
exactly. Yeah, it doesn't start with like, well, white guys got here, and then the history actually started. In not a lot of space, not calling it small, but not a lot of space, they're able to cover centuries of important stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really great. And it's not just display cases. Like they actually have a lot of things that are interactive, which I think is really neat.
Like when we took Pio Pico's top hat and we were all pretending to be the Monopoly man. Remember that with that priceless artifact?
They don't make heads like that anymore because that head didn't fit any of us. We shook that guy's bone. We shook Una Paracero's bones, remember?
Yeah, when we broke into the relic area.
We were playing Flintstones with all those people's bones, remember?
Yeah, and then there was that part where they had the original charter of the city and we all had to sneeze at the same time and we all used it as a napkin. Remember that, everybody?
But we were told not to talk about that stuff. Oh, no. We did it again. Oh, no.
God. And everything in there is now a facsimile. Another thing that we didn't get to talk about in the episode that we went to afterwards was they have this garden, this really nice garden outside that is growing like everything. Yeah. It's growing like all these herbs and vegetables and fruits.
Which they mentioned they use inside of the Main Street the Calle Principal they have in the thing, like some of the they like grow rosemary.
Oh yeah,
mint,
right.
And they
Yeah,
use
the
that for the
stuff you can
actual thing.
smell.
And they also grew fruit that we took home.
Yeah, she gave us.
apples.
They gave us apples, and I ate a tomato right off the
Yeah.
vine, and then I ate the apple.
Yeah, and I had to ask about rats because I'm like that. I'm like, do you guys have rats here? And they're like, not really.
And not on the apples.
It's a beautiful thing, really, but like to be in a garden and there's the 101 freeway next to you, and in the side of City Hall, like you're in the city center, and there's this peaceful little garden.
Yeah,
with
and
the
you
sound of
can
traffic
really
behind
taste the 101 in the apple. And yeah, that street, that like recreation of an old LA street that they have there
Calle
is really
Principal.
cool. And you can go into all the different buildings, like recreations of
Yeah,
a
like
pharmacy,
or a
of a
music
grocery
store,
store,
or
music
a
store, a
clothing store,
barber
yeah.
shop. Was there a barber shop?
you. No.
Oh, then who cut my hair? Barber. If you want to learn more about the stuff they have going on,
They have a lot of events there.
yeah, they have a lot, and it's free.
Yeah.
It's a free thing. We hammer on a lot, but we can't hammer on enough. It's free.
It's free.
Check them out on Facebook to see what they have going on, or also on their Instagram at La Plaza LA. That's La Plaza La.
La Pasala.
Support them, go visit them, listen to
Please.
this. Also, you can, if you like us, leave, hey, new listeners and old listeners, leave us a review on iTunes, leave us 5 stars on your podcast app, or if you have iTunes on a Windows computer on your desktop, now that it's, I think, obsolete on everything else. Leave us some stars. It helps us out, gets more people like you finding us, new listener.
New listener, hi, how are you? You can follow us, or you already have, on Instagram, LA_Meekly, on Twitter, LA Meekly. You can email us, la.meekly@gmail.com. I don't know why we've made it so complicated and having 3 different things, but whatever.
I know. If you work at or know someone who works at a place like this around the city and you want us to come interview you, send us an email or contact us some way. Also on Facebook, YouTube, you can listen to this. You can also support us on Patreon if you like. For as little as $5 a month, we can send you handwritten, crafted, edible postcards. Please eat them.
There's no note on it that says you can't eat it or shouldn't be eating it. It's just
We're
kind
not
of common
doctors,
knowledge.
but we eat everything. Just ask Greg at the Portos buffet. Yeah.
Enjoy.
Hey, enjoy.
Enjoy it.
See ya on the other side. We won't be there. Sucker.
Oh, and microphones here. Sometimes people get really relaxed and they'll talk here. And we're like, no.
Microphone's here.
Some people who have been doing the podcast for 6 years still do that.
Because your hand is naturally.
Thinly veiled dig right there.
Was it veiled? Who are you both, and how long have you lived in LA?
I'm Esperanza Sanchez. I've lived in Los Angeles my whole life, born and raised. I have transitioned from living on the west side to moving closer to LA, so in downtown.
What
area.
part of West Side, if you allow me to interrupt?
I'm between Baldwin Hills, Culver City.
Okay.
So basically it's West Adams, but not the historical aspect. It's more the 1920s like bungalows. So
Okay.
where the Expo line is now by the Redondo.
Right.
So, in La Cienega. And now I'm here at La Plaza de Cultura de Artes, and I've been here for 3 years, and I'm the assistant curator here.
I'm Mariah Berlanga-Shevchuk. I live in Mid-City, and I have been in LA for 5 years now. I went to grad school in San Francisco and now work at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes with Esperanza. I'm the associate curator here.
Where are you from originally?
Tucson, Arizona.
She's so proud of
I
it.
love getting asked that.
Second question. Are you from Tucson?
The greatest city in the States? Yes, I am.
Yeah.
So you already went through the next 2 questions.
Oh.
You answered all 12 in one. Impressive.
Yeah.
Say again where we are exactly.
We are here at the LA Plaza de Cultura y Artes. This is where the city pretty much started, the founding of Los Angeles. We are down here in downtown LA, close to Chinatown, and of course close to Union Station and Olvera Street right across the street.
Right off of Main Street.
Yeah, right off of Main Street and the 101, directly across from Plaza de Olvera, which is the founding place of the city. But from Olvera, we can get into later, but that is like a very white American version of the founding. Whereas La Plaza is the only Mexican-American, and Latinx museum in the city dedicated to the stories and the art of that community. And so we consider ourselves more the founding of LA.
And you both, I think, said this already. What do you do here?
Well, as we said, we are the curators here. I'm the assistant curator here at La Plaza Cultura y Artes. I'm the historian here on the team, and Mariah.
I'm the associate curator. We both do a lot of different things as curators at a small museum. We deal with the objects, with the collections, so we do what other museums have a dedicated registrar, is a position in museums that deals with the objects and with the loans. We do all of that ourselves. We also dabble in museum, like exhibition design. We work on the tours. We work on the educational components that go with exhibitions. So while we're the curators and our main job is research and writing, we do a lot more than just that.
Yes, we're involved in the interactives and also installations and de-installations and pickups and dropouts of collections that we do not own.
Well, because you were saying that there's not much that is owned specifically by the building, so it's sort of a collaboration with every archive amongst the city.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Archives, museums, gallery spaces, lenders, private or public. Yeah, we reach out to them and to incorporate their objects or artworks into the exhibitions that we have here at La Plaza.
Yeah, we're not a non-collecting institution, which is not super common for museums, but if you're smaller or if your exhibitions change over frequently, it can be more common. So we don't own any of these objects, which Esperanza has alluded to. We borrow a lot from local lenders, be they libraries, galleries, private owners, but more often than not, we're working with other local historical societies and local libraries.
How did you get into this? I want to know. I'm very curious in art curating.
I never wanted to be a curator before this job.
We got it. That's what I wanted to hear.
No, I'm out. No, I have a master's in museum studies, and I have always wanted to work in museums, to be clear. I always loved history. I've always loved being around objects and have natural writing and reading skills, so curating really worked out for me. But I'm just passionate about museums as community spaces and what they can do to actually uplift and represent the communities that they are based in.
And I grew up here in LA. There's a lot of diverse cultures here and also a lot of museums, so I grew up going to those all the time. At the time when I was a child, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in museums, but further out as the financial crisis happened in 2008 and 2009, I decided I wanted to go into teaching, and history was always my passion. And so I have a bachelor's and a master's from CSUN focusing on U.S. and Latin American relations, but mostly focusing on the Cold War. And so because I have that history background and I started as an education person, I moved into the museum world in 2013 when I started working at the Autry Museum. Okay. So while working there as an educator there, I started diving into working with the curatorial team there, and that's how it ended up leading me here with the internships I did at CSUN and also the research background that I have. So I worked at the Museum of Latin American Art, and I was a guest curator there, focusing on a Latinx comic book series, focusing on the cultures and the communities instead of the superheroes that most people tend to focus on comics books. And ended up here at La Plaza doing all of that research in history and in art.
What do you think of the Wendy Museum, since you were focusing on the Cold War?
Yeah.
And you lived in Culver.
Exactly.
Cold War city.
It's different. I think they focus a lot on the European perspective. It's obviously the Cold War, which is also what I studied when I was doing my bachelor's. But going to the Wendy Museum there, I realized I want to focus on Latin America, especially because my parents are immigrants. And so they came in the 70s, and while Mexico wasn't really dealing with the Cold War, a lot of Central Americans and South Americans were. So they were migrating here to the MacArthur Park or the Westlake area. So that's where my focus kind of went over, because I felt that the Wendy Museum was missing that link. They're still focusing on the Cold War, but not, Euro perspective, yeah.
The cold country part of the Cold War.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Which a lot of immigrants were coming over because of the repression that they were dealing with there at the time. So that makes sense.
Well, you kind of were getting to what this place's role is in the city, because you were saying there's not that many dedicated, like the Natural History Museum kind of has a thing, the Autry Museum kind of has a thing, but this is like this is this place's thing.
Yeah, this is the only museum in the city that solely focuses on Mexican American, and Latinx experiences. Yeah. So in terms of our role in the city, I think we're crucial. I think everyone who moves to LA or grew up in LA should come here, because we have a permanent exhibition called LA Starts Here. That's where we're sitting as we tape this podcast. And it tells the history of the founding of the city from a Mexican perspective, which you can't divorce the Mexican perspective from the story of the city. This land used to be Mexico, and I think too few people know that, so everyone who lives in LA should come here and learn a bit about how they came to be on the land that they're on.
Yeah. And you guys do what we like to do, which is put a lot of blame on the Spanish missionaries.
They might not like us.
The part dedicated to the missions, there's all about the torture devices, pretty much.
And we get a lot of positive feedback about that because so few institutions are willing to go there. And as a Latino organization, like, we do have a close relationship with the church, and a lot of our visitors are very involved in the church still, and a lot of our staff is too. But we didn't, we're not going to lie. We're not going to cover up, and lying by omission is just as bad as outright lying. And so, we felt a responsibility to that history.
No, definitely. And as a trained historian, and also Mariah can jump on this as well, is you want to give the perspective. So you do want to talk about the bad things and also the good things as well. So you can't just, say the missions system did this and not talk about the actual repercussions of what it did to the land and to the people that were here. So we do discuss it in that situation and in other situations too as well.
It is weird that because it's not like in school talked about that much. So it's kind of weird. It's almost like validating to have a museum talk about it, because it's when they don't talk about it, it's kind of like, well, why isn't anyone addressing this?
How many field trips as a kid do you take to the missions?
Oh yeah, your whole fourth grade curriculum. And we actually do get a lot of fourth grade classes that come to LA Starts Here, and they spend a lot of time with that section. And our educators don't shy away. I mean, they make it age appropriate, but they do talk about the repercussions.
It's get really graphic.
Yeah, right? You could. I mean, and we don't. I think
this is a syphilis job.
Yeah, this is the syphilis shackle. That's essentially what we have here.
Definitely. And I think our education team here, at least the teachers and also the public programming, does dive into discussions of what's going on in LA history and also connecting it back to the contemporary throughout the United States. But I think here they're keeping the balance of demonstrating what actually the mission system did, but also what was going on with the local population, the indigenous that were here.
Because it's confusing when you're not taught that much about it, and then you read about it later, and then you see that what's his name is becoming a saint or whatever. It's very confusing.
Yeah, we're trying to correct like kind of the Western education system here. I mean, museums, I will advocate till I die that the importance of them in public education. And so it's really gratifying when school groups do come here and learn something at a young age, because we can think about our upbringing and what we were taught about. Me being raised in Arizona, I got a very skewed, love bringing up Arizona. Come visit. I should just move back. No. But, we think about our own upbringing and our own education and how lacking it was in talking about not just the mission system is one example, but we can talk about slavery in the United States and in Latin America. I didn't really realize how many African enslaved people were brought to Latin America until I started working here, and it's monumental in comparison to what was in the US. And so like there's all kinds of, once you realize what you've been missing in your education, like you can start to really delve into the other untold stories. And we in the curatorial department really make a focus of representing underrepresented voices. So you'll find a lot of stories of indigenous perspectives, and particularly of women, in all of our exhibitions, not just our history shows.
So this might be hard to answer here, but both of you, what do you think is the most important thing here?
Like the most important object or the most important story? It's up to interpretation.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Oh gosh.
For me, I think the unconstitutional deportations that happened in the 1930s, I think that's a story that is very much LA, but it's something that is still happening today. And I think the backlash and the discrimination that people face, I mean, it's something that you can listen to the videos. I mean, I get sentimental because my parents are immigrants, and so are my grandparents, and even my great-grandparents. They came from Europe, and they were in Mexico and married the indigenous population there. So for me to listen to a video and have a man cry, and say that he lost his father because he was deported in the 30s and didn't see him until much more later on when he was no longer living. For me, that's a connection. I mean, the fact that you have children that are being separated at the border from their families, and we're one of the museums in LA discussing that situation that happened in the past and this push and pull factor with immigrants in the United States. So to me, I think that's very important.
It's very important to go to a museum and find something that's still relevant then and now, and to have that connection.
Hatred is cyclical.
It truly is. I actually would agree with Esperanza. The story of the unconstitutional deportations is an LA story, but it's a United States story, and I think we're the only museum in the country that has a permanent space dedicated to telling that history. And as she mentioned, that is happening right now, like the exact same things that happened. And so for people, like I was posting about it on Twitter earlier, and people like are shocked that they've never heard of this history before. Again, it's one of those stories you don't learn, but it impacted everyone in the U.S. when it happened.
I don't think I knew about the stuff that happened in the 30s until maybe a year ago. And the missions are great as far as I'm concerned. That's what I was raised to believe.
No.
Right. No, you're fed a lot of propaganda, like a very nationalistic
who is it
propaganda
helping?
in public education. And so we're really trying to counter that.
But
here.
I don't see who are we trying to defend?
Yeah, America doesn't like dealing with its own racist history. So here we are.
And also, I mean, it is hard to, we sometimes have community members that come in and, they would like for us to just spin the positive aspects of it. And for us, it's very important to be honest, but also to give people the background information that they weren't being taught in school, or because they immigrated here or their family wasn't able to provide that foundation. We're providing it in order for them to understand what happened, how they can fight back in many ways, using history as an example, but also help their community as well, whether it's people of Mexican origin or Latin American origin or someone else that's coming from Europe. It doesn't matter. We're all immigrants in some shape or form in the United States.
We always try to connect the present to the past in all of our exhibitions, no matter what they're talking about. It could be an art show, like a photography show we were talking about earlier. We have an art show right now, and it's entirely art, but there's so much historical context rooted in this exhibition because of the data that the artist is translating into imagery. And so we're always trying to talk about the lessons from history and how they can be applied to make for a better society today.
Exactly. So empowering the people, that's what we believe in.
Do you want to talk about the current exhibit right now?
Sure. It's called Linda Vallejo, Brown Belongings. It is La Plaza's first solo show dedicated to a woman artist. And to make up for the lost time, we gave her both of our temporary galleries, which is the first time La Plaza has ever done a show of this size. So we made up for the short shrift. The show focuses on the last 10 years of Linda's practice. She's been an artist, a professional artist for 40 years, and the last 10 years of her work has focused on brownness. So not only brown skin, but brown culture and brown identity, and how those who identify as brown navigate the U.S. And so we've combined 4 portfolios of her work, half of which deal with data, half of which deal with representation. And so in one series, Make 'Em All Mexican, she's literally taking white imagery and she's painting it brown. And it kind of gets at the idea of how popular culture is shaped by white imagery, and we don't even realize it until you're looking at a picture of Shirley Temple and she's painted brown, and you're like, oh, that was me as a child, but I never saw an image like this before. And then, we've had a lot of visitors have very, very strong emotional reactions to the artwork because they're seeing themselves represented for the first time.
How do what do they do?
You want to tell the story?
Yeah, I want to hear
definitely.
a story.
We did a walkthrough, Linda and I, last week, a public tour, and we had a mother who is a teacher for 4th grade or 5th grade, I can't remember what, but in elementary, and she brought her 2 daughters with her, and she started crying. She said, it was very positive and reinforcement for her to see brown skin on some of these images.
Celebrated in this way.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, she teared up because she says that she feels like she has to kind of shield her daughters away from some of the things that are being said by the president, the administrators, and it just, for her, it's so fearful that, she fears that her children are growing up in a society where they're being discriminated because of their skin tone and because of their culture. And to see that La Plaza has 2 floors to demonstrate that, she wants to bring her students to come and see this show as well to empower them. That's great. So that's one of the positive things that we have seen ourselves, but I'm sure there's more positive feedback from other people.
We've had tearful reactions specifically to the childhood section that we have, I think because it just strikes a nerve with people who grew up in a certain generation, perhaps older than Esperanza or myself. We're both in our late 20s. And so people who are a couple generations older than us really never saw this kind of representation when they were growing up. For us, it's a little more normal. There's obviously still quite a ways to go, but we benefit from seeing the work of the activists and the community organizers who've come before us, who really made a lot of strides to strike at some equal representation. And obviously there's a long way to go, but if you didn't grow up like us, I think there's a lot to be confronted with here, and so it's a very powerful show in that way.
And it also showed us that Latino John F. Kennedy is Desi Arnaz, it turns out.
And he's handsome, as Linda would say.
Yes. Yeah. And as I mentioned with that piece, Linda really wanted to kind of focus on the United States really started on the East Coast, but there was a community of people here when this city was founded in 1781. So she's saying, imagine if these presidents were people of color other than President Barack Obama. How would have history changed in that aspect?
That whole politics section. We even have a piece of Augustus, the Augustus of Prima Portia. There's a replica of a very famous statue of him, who is one of the most famous Roman emperors, and she's painted him brown. And so it really begs the question of what would the state of the world be like today if people of color had been in positions of power throughout history. And really Linda's goal for this whole exhibition is to get people to be in conversation with one another. She has a series of work called the Brown Dot Project and Datos Sagrados. They both deal with data, and they translate statistical facts about Latinxs in the U.S. Could be their educational attainment, their workforce status, their marriage and household statistics, and she translates them into images. And so the idea is to spark a conversation like, oh, did you know 44% of Latinas have a high school degree or lower? Like that might, and that might be a fact that you didn't know about your own community. Or if you're a non-Latinx coming to see the exhibition, like you're learning something that's maybe different from what you're hearing in the media. So we're really trying to empower people to be able to combat and resist stereotypes about the Latinx community.
Right. Especially with immigration too. She talks about people who are native U.S. born citizens in comparison to people who are immigrants as well. So that's stats around, because most people, if you ask them out on the street, they probably don't know what the stat is. I mean, I don't remember.
Or they'd place it much lower,
Exactly.
thinking that all Latinxs in the U.S. must be undocumented immigrants, whereas actually 65% of Latinos living in the States now were born here. So, you got to kind of punch them back with a little fact.
Exactly.
Hit them with data.
Hit 'em with data.
And she uses the data in many ways and presents these beautiful designs that you have no idea that has this stat behind
deeper
it.
meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderfully done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get to the next question, I want to hear, because I had no idea about the Cinco de Mayo thing, that it started in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Which is
We're just hitting people with all kinds of unknown facts here. It's cool because, there's a lot of things, like you're hearing a lot about what's going on at the border right now, but little would you know that it actually it's already happened. And also Cinco de Mayo obviously is a huge American celebration and has become quite white in the last few years, in the last many years, not
That's
few.
our other podcast is quite well.
So Cinco de Mayo, and Esperanza could talk better about this, but Cinco de Mayo was founded by Mexican women in Los Angeles as a way of celebrating their patriotism for their country. So
Exactly. You had women here who had their children fighting for the war during the Civil War here. And of course, you have it both fighting for both sides of the war, but in most cases, they were fighting with the North. And so you also had France, who was giving a lot of money to the South. And so they were trying to fight back because in many ways, France was trying to invade also Mexico. They lost with Puebla, which is celebrated there, but it's not celebrated in Mexico completely because it's only there for Cinco de Mayo. But here in the U.S., it became an American tradition because you have these Mexican-American women that are trying to not only provide the funds for their own children to win the war, but it's also to push France away. And it's a way to celebrate, to demonstrate that they've been here from the very beginning. So
Cinco de Mayo is not Mexican Independence Day, as probably a lot of people don't know. And it is not celebrated in Mexico except in Puebla, which is where the battle took place against France. But it's more than just about the Battle of Puebla. It's about Mexican-American women celebrating their patriotism and the fight against racism and white supremacy.
I feel like every year someone is explaining it's not Mexican Independence Day, and it always confuses me, and now it's even more confusing to me.
Mexican Independence Day is in September, so celebrate it then.
Exactly. Mexico City has a big party, so I would recommend
check it
Are you
out.
going to celebrate Cinco de Mayo?
Yeah, if
no one will there.
Want to compare it to the U.S. and Mexico, they have a big party. A couple days, so.
So what is your favorite thing here?
I really love the building that we're in. I'm a geek for history. We've already established that both of us really love history. I get a total kick out of like the historical building aspect of this job. And our offices, we're very lucky that we are on the second floor of the Plaza House, which is part of the conjoined structure that we're in. But the skylight that's in the second floor is really beautiful, and it's historic. It was there previously.
It just got reconstructed because it got burned down at a certain point.
Yeah, the building that we're in has existed since the late 1800s. Both of the buildings have been around since then. Both buildings went through different uses. The one that I'm talking about, the Plaza House, was a boarding house at one point, so it was basically a hotel, and it had shops on the first floor, and the offices that the curators are in are actually old boarding rooms. So I have a fireplace in my office, and it's really cool, and it just makes me feel like I'm part of history every day when I come to work and like get to be in my office. Yeah.
I do too. I like the buildings, especially because I'm a historian. I'm someone that really loves it, and I love that the city, and also we have to give credit obviously to Gloria Molina, who is our founder for this institution. It couldn't have happened without her and the efforts of other people. But what I think I enjoy the most is that they repurposed these two buildings in order to be a museum, the same way that El Pueblo did as well. And it's something that the city has really been doing now with downtown LA, trying to repurpose the buildings down there.
Yeah, the LA Conservancy worked very closely with Gloria Molina to retrofit the buildings. So our facilities director likes to say that it's essentially a building within a building, which it is. There's a brick facade, and then inside is like steel and and wood. But there are a lot of original features still, and you can see these columns are like very old wood. They're just covered up so that people don't touch them.
Yeah,
but you can find little elements of things. It does make curating in an old building, like it does make it more challenging for sure. But you know, if you love history, you're down for the ride.
What would LA be without this place? Or what would LA be like without this place?
Oh gosh,
you know, I don't know. Yeah. I think maybe because this is probably one of the only places in LA that talks about the Latino experience here in Los Angeles and throughout the United States. It's really hard because the only closest one after this place is the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach. Yeah. I don't know. I think it would be a disservice. I think it would be a disservice because we're right across the street from Alvera Street, and I feel, it would just be sad, I think.
That's kind of like a double-edged sword for us because we're only 9 years old, and as such, many people don't know about us. Like I think if you talk to people and you say like, "Oh, I work at La Plaza," 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 out of 100 people are like, "What is that?" Or Plaza de la Raza. They think that we're another cultural organization in the city, and so it's hard because to ask what would LA be without La Plaza, it'd probably be the same because people don't know about us. But I think if more people knew to come here, especially those who do go to Olvera Street and get one version of the city's founding and its history, like they should always come here to counter and to learn the true history, I would argue. As you may or may not know, Olvera Street was founded by a white woman in the 1920s. Christine Sterling, as a romanticized version of like the Spanish-Mexican romantic ideal. And
that didn't really hit me until I started doing research on China City. And I looked at Olvera Street, I'm like, oh, it's Disneyland. I get it. Like a Mexican Disneyland, but it has been super mismanaged. And it's starting to kind of rebound, and a lot of the vendors that are there are actually Mexican or Latinx now, but for a long time it was still white owned, and so it was like a total farce. But it gets a lot of tourists, and then they don't come across the street because they don't know about us.
But there are people that do come around, which is always great, and I feel like that's where our outreach and education team come in, but it's not as bad. It's within our own community, yes. I feel like reaching out to other people is a little bit harder, but I think it's just the way we are located. I mean, LACMA and Getty get everyone to go over, while with us is a little harder.
And they've been around much longer. So to be fair, we are a new institution, and I think we would be very central to Los Angeles' cultural scene if more people knew about us.
I think that what really matters is this is one of the best LA history places in town, and you're in the center of it, like where the city started too.
And we're free.
Yes, exactly.
Forgot to mention. How do you feel about people in LA's attitude towards the history of LA?
I mean, I think not enough people know the history of LA. I mean, we know
that's what we're struggling with.
Yeah, well, and we're a city, and I'm an example of it. Like, we're a city of people who aren't from here. Yeah. And so it's, I think, really tough to get people to appreciate the history and like the culture that exists here. You go anywhere else in the country, and they're like, "Oh, LA has no culture. LA has no history," and it's so not true. So it's hard. Like, we're really trying to combat that and educate people, and I think we do a really great job of getting people through the door with our programs. We're also a cultural center. We're not just a museum, so we do have like a wide range of programs that talk about all kinds of different elements of Latinidad, and range from music to food tastings to walkthroughs with artists. You know, we try to kind of capture it all.
And that's where we see a lot of people coming in. It's just, it's harder to kind of get other people to come over if they're interested in art or if they're interested in history. And as a historian, I love it. So I'm all over the place trying to figure out the history of everything, Googling things and doing all these things. But I'm also aware that a lot of people don't have an interest in the subject matter until they see a photograph or they see something that they're like, oh, I didn't realize that was going on. Or KCT, documented it because they're very good about doing short stories. Short columns about that as well.
Yeah, and I think that more people in LA could come to appreciate LA's history if more places in LA spoke about their history. So like if you go to Dodger Stadium, you're not going to see anything about Chavez Ravine or the wealthy Mexican community that existed there for generations before the Brooklyn Dodgers came in and the city of LA facilitated the wiping out of that entire community. And you can go to Dodger Stadium and you won't learn anything about it. And I think that's a disservice to the residents.
And they renamed the street there too. That was, connecting it back to Chavez Ravine as well. So you're kind of erasing that history, even though the city doesn't realize that that is going on as well.
And also when the Dodgers came, not only did they get rid of Chavez Ravine, but all the little Latino baseball teams in the area just dissipated after that.
We did an exhibition on a few years ago. Peloteros in Paradise.
And it's a combination of both the city and the Dodgers and other factors that
capitalized
on that.
Yeah.
Dodgers wiping out our history.
Stupid Dodgers. And so it's very ironic to me to see so many like Latino Dodgers supporters. I mean, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad that there's some unifier in the community, but it's also like if they knew that history, would they be? Maybe they'd all be Angels fans. Who knows? I don't know the history of the Angels, so I can't.
Oh yeah.
Angels work at the missions. I don't know.
Yeah. They're from the missions, so they wouldn't like either. Who knows who they'd like?
And they're in Orange County. I mean, they were part of getting
they won't get them to admit that. Apparently, they insist on saying they're Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's a rivalry, right?
Yeah. So what is the strangest thing that's ever happened here? I'm ready for this.
Well, so this didn't actually happen to either of us, but this did happen to the former senior curator here. So there's a story that in her office, a woman, one of our porters, who was cleaning the offices, went into her office after hours and saw a midget cowboy spinning in the chair.
What?
And the woman quit on the spot, and she walked out of La Plaza, and she never came back. And so Erin, our former senior curator, she did some research because, as I mentioned, the Plaza house where her office was a boarding house, and she found a cast photo from a midget cowboy movie that was filmed in the 30s, and there was one person circled in this picture with an arrow pointing down, and I'll send you guys the picture.
Oh yeah, please.
And so she suspects that perhaps the cast of this midget cowboy movie stayed at the Plaza house while they were filming, which did happen. And that person died, and they are still. Although, what happened to me personally, were you here when this guy came in who was like a medium or a ghost whisperer?
Yeah.
He came in, he got very upset that we wouldn't put his artwork on display because he was white. And I was like, sorry, but we're dedicated to people who are Mexican.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, well, there's ghosts everywhere here. There's someone behind you right now. And I was just like, cool. I gotta go. Thanks for sharing. So La Plaza is definitely haunted.
Okay.
That's
good to know.
Sadly, I don't have any of those stories. I have other ghost stories, but not from this place. So I'm very lucky, and to be honest, I wouldn't want to know because I want to leave. If that were to happen, I would run.
If you go in the basements late at night, it feels very creepy down there.
Former tunnel.
The former
basements
opium
here,
den
right?
tunnels.
A great phrase. The former opium den tunnels.
What's this place's best kept secret?
Besides old opium den tunnels.
Yeah.
That might be a good one.
Besides that ghost they're hiding upstairs.
I don't know, to be honest.
I think all of what we do is a little bit of a secret because, again, people don't necessarily know about us.
Yeah.
I think our free Summer Salsa series is pretty incredible.
Tell us about that.
So the second Friday of the month, every summer, we do a free concert series of salsa bands. And so that's actually a really great way of getting different communities through the door because salsa is based in African origin. There's we're working on a show about Afro Latinidad that opens next year, and so kind of exploring Latino music, quote quote, and how it's actually very much based in African origin. And so we have a free concert series. I think it's 4 months because it's for the whole summer. And people come, we set up a dance floor. Salsa groups come and practice dancing here, but it's totally free. And we actually have almost all of our programs are free. So I think our cultural programming is probably our best kept secret.
That's great. That's good to know.
Especially when they're late at night too. They're between 7 and 9, sometimes even 8 to 10. But it's hard for people to get down here, downtown LA, especially if they're stuck in traffic.
Right. Yeah. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that question because I'm thinking Union Station's right there. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you gotta be in Union Station.
Right. And then you have to take the metro in LA.
That's the hard part. So when's the best time to come here?
Well, not on Tuesdays because we're closed to the public.
Exactly.
Yeah, Wednesdays through Mondays.
Yeah, definitely. On the weekends, we're open from 12 to 6 p.m. So people are able to get here. The people do come to Alvera Street or they're coming over from Union Station or going to Placita, the church Placita next door to us. They'll wander in here and they start to get comfortable and come more frequently.
And this place is really inviting, mostly because it's free, but also just having the doors open and being like, okay, well, here's a door open and it looks old. I'm going to walk into it and then you find a list.
Yeah, we're working on putting some signage out front on Main Street that lets people know even more clearly that this is a museum.
Yeah.
But we're lucky that we're in like a historic museum district. So the Chinese American Museum, the Italian American Museum, and the Museum of Social Justice are all within a 1-block radius of us, and they're all free.
Yeah.
So we're trying to partner with all of these organizations to create like a little historic museum district similar to Museum Row in Miracle Mile.
Case in point, as someone's trying to get in the door right now, but the door's locked.
No,
There's your problem.
This is not the
Right.
entrance. It's misleading. There's doors everywhere. That's how welcoming we are.
Well, you can't figure out how to.
The doors
get
are
in.
locked.
Yeah.
Also,
Choose
people,
wisely.
sometimes they'll read the signs properly, and if they're here for an event, a special one, they didn't realize that they can go through the front doors. But another thing that I was going to mention too, it does help that we are at the center of where Olvera Street is across the street, because if there's events out there, they tend to wander in here as well.
That's
or
right.
if we have, what you will say, a pachanga, basically a big party out
Yeah.
here, people do come over and they're like, what's going on with that music?
Yeah.
And most of them are free, so people tend to join
walk
and
right in.
walk
Yeah,
right
that's
in. Yeah,
great.
they feel welcome.
I think also a lot of tour groups will come on those big buses.
Oh.
They'll come to Olvera Street, and then sometimes they'll come through. So maybe avoid a weekday afternoon for that reason. I would say come on a weekend day because it's always more fun to visit a museum when there's more people
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
In my
Same thing, yeah.
opinion, yeah,
Exactly.
makes you feel like you're actually allowed to be there.
Yeah. So if you're going through the galleries and now you want to learn more about the public programs, that's the opportunity to come and do that, because we do have movie screenings, we have the foods, we have so many
And we'll
things
do
going on.
movie screenings where the actors will come. We have like an Edward James Olmos series this summer. I don't know if he's actually coming to that, but he has come in the past. He's a friend of the museum, so that's a perk of being like the only Latinx museum in the city of Los Angeles. We won't count the Long Beach Museum.
Edward James Olmos privileges.
Yeah, and like a lot of like the big Mexican or Latinx like actors and directors and producers, like they're friends of the museum because we routinely will show their work, or we'll have panels where we want to talk about like representation in Hollywood. We have an exhibition right now that talks about representation in Hollywood, so we'll get a lot of them to come through. And Eva Longoria was a founding member of our board.
Oh, wow.
So
That's great.
yeah.
And it feels very intimate. It's not in comparison to other locations where they have, 800, 900 seats, while here it's much more intimate.
Yeah.
We are able to fit 2,000 people on the
Yeah.
campus, but it feels more intimate. You're able to see the person talking
That's
instead of
great.
seeing a
Close,
big
yeah.
screen of their face.
Did you show Blood In, Blood Out recently? And did
Yes.
the entire cast come?
I believe so.
So,
yeah.
Okay,
I think
yeah. I
that
was
was part
getting-
of this summer series that we're doing right now.
I was getting text messages from my cousin all day, like, you won't believe it, and like updates. of each
Yeah.
cast
No, yeah,
member.
we did. I think there was
Yeah.
it was an anniversary or something,
something like that.
perhaps.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't remember.
Yeah, because a couple years too, we did the Suit Ones as well.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll be doing Stand and Deliver later this
Very excited
summer.
about that.
Yeah.
Of course.
Very important question. Where should you park if you come here?
We have a parking lot if you have cash.
Okay.
But
It's a small one. However, just FYI, just because so many people are here because they're coming to Olvera Street, they're going to the church, they're going to other places
or
around
a lot
the
of
area.
lawyers park in our parking lot to go down across the freeway. There's all of the big law buildings
Yeah.
over there.
So I do
The
recommend.
courts.
Yeah, definitely.
Law
The church also has a big, semi-big garage space across the street as well. But I would definitely recommend public transit if
Yeah.
you are able to, or take an Uber down here, so that way you can just go right across the street to Union Station and take
And
public
it's a
transit.
7-minute
and-
walk from
Yeah.
Union Station up the hill to
Exactly.
us. We've timed it. It's very easy. We go
Yeah.
get coffee there frequently.
Exactly. And
Randomly
also,
enough.
you learn more about LA history because
Yeah.
El Pueblo has a lot of plaques out there that you're able to read.
As you
and-
walk through.
Exactly. And also, over the weekend, they have their own big parties too. So you might as well go over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would not recommend driving here.
Yeah.
While we do have a parking lot, it is very small and it is kind of expensive, as are the other parking lots on the street. There's not so much metered parking. Everything's all one ways down
Yeah.
here.
Which reminds us, get our parking validated again
Yeah.
before you forget.
I definitely.
Yeah.
I also recommend carpool if you're able to. Like, if you're coming with a group of people, just come in a van.
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier.
Get a U-Haul van.
Yeah.
Get everybody in the
Or
back.
bring the whole fam.
And transit. That's one of the ways to do it.
So now our final question, aside from the Porto's buffet Greg made a fool of himself at, what's the best place to eat around here?
We love Porto's here. Shout out. We'd love a sponsorship. My personal favorite is the cafe at the California Endowment. California Endowment is a nonprofit that is headquartered down the street from us, and they have a cafe called the Rise Up Cafe. And part of California Endowment's mission is to provide healthcare and healthy foods to underserved communities throughout California. So they have this cafe in connection with their mission, which is super low cost. All the food is organic and locally sourced, and it's delicious. That's my personal favorite. It's a little secret.
Where's that at?
It is
Across the
down
street from
Main
Philippe's.
Street.
Yeah.
It's across the street from Philippe's, the
Philippe's.
original. Yeah.
Okay.
It's directly across
Got
the
it.
street. So you have to go into their main building and you have to check in at the front desk, but the cafe is free for everyone to use.
Okay,
You just have to go sign in. So it's really like, it's mostly just the people who work in this area that go there.
Okay.
But you'll see like important officials because a lot of meetings take place at the California Endowment. Secret cafe with a mission.
Exactly. I'm really big fan of that one as well. And
Yeah.
also across the street from, well, actually within Union Station, I think is the Water and Power. They also have their own kind of secret cafe.
Cafeteria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a lot, and it's mostly just people who work in the area
Yeah.
that go there.
definitely.
But also special shout out to Cielito Lindo.
Yes.
It's like the best taquitos in the city, and it's
Yeah.
in Olvera Street.
And there's a couple other locations there as well. I mean, I forgot the name of the location, but we went to go get asado fries. Like a lot of Dodger fans
Mr.
tend to go
Churro.
there. Mr. Churro, there you go.
It's
love
called Mr.
Mr.
Churro,
I love
and they have
Mr.
really
Churro.
bomb carne asada fries,
Yes.
which are my favorite thing in the world to eat.
Yes,
so.
definitely. And of course,
Strawberry
Philippe's
filled.
also. I would recommend Philippe's also. It's
Yeah.
always packed, but definitely go out. It's worth the wait.
Yeah,
Last
there's
time
lots
you-
of good gyms around.
Yeah.
here. I think the Jewel of New Orleans. There's actually like really
There's a
good.
literal gem here.
It's
Yeah.
called I think it's called the Little Jewel of New Orleans.
Okay.
I might be butchering the name, but it's like a Cajun spot. in, like,
Okay.
southern
And Little
California.
Tokyo too. They have some
Oh, yeah.
amazing
Oh,
food
yeah.
in Chinatown. I mean, it's so extensive. It's great.
Let's extend this to this Grand Central Market. And
Yeah, you can walk there.
Yeah.
It's like a 15-minute walk.
why
Yeah.
not?
You could walk there.
Or you could take public transit to it too. I'm all for
You
it.
work for
Yeah,
MTA.
I know I should.
Suckers.
Why not? No, I'm
She
good.
takes a
I love
trolley
it.
out of
I'm
it.
all for it.
But Esperanza does take public transit to get to work. A lot of our employees do,
Oh,
which is
good.
nice. Yeah.
Makes it easier. And of course, because I live in the Westlake MacArthur Park area, I can just take the train and
Yeah.
head down here, red or purple line.
Pretty
yeah.
nice. Well, thank you both for letting us interview you and
Thanks for having
giving
us.
us a tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for interviewing us.
Thanks for
We're so
having us.
happy to be
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Come back anytime.
No.
No, never again. I'm gonna steal all the portos and run out the door.